The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene. You're back with me again on DurianASEAN, and this time we will be interviewing US Ambassador Yoon on the US pivot to ASEAN with a focus on the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Early on, we discussed a lot on Malaysia and also Laos chairmanship 2015 and 2016 respectively. We also discussed on the US President Obama's shift to putting a lot of focus on Asia and also Southeast Asia. Let's move on to the TPP discussion. US Ambassador Yoon, how would the TPP change the economic and political climate of Southeast Asia?
TPP is foremost a trade and investment agreement to lower barriers to trade and investment. So it is commercial and economic item. It is an agreement among 12 countries in Asia Pacific region, including several in Southeast Asia, some in Northeast Asia, some on the other side of Pacific, such as Chile, Canada, Mexico, and the United States and Peru. So in that sense, I think the name is very appropriate. It is a Trans-Pacific Partnership. Foremost, the most important item we must remember is that when countries trade with each other, there are benefits. It is not a zero-sum game. It is benefit goes to both sides. And TPP, the immediate benefit will be in reduction in tariffs. When tariffs are reduced, imports become cheaper, and when it's cheaper, there are more exports, and that's what gains from trade is. TPP will also reduce many barriers to foreign investment. So there will be American investors here, more American investors here, as well as more investment from other TPP countries. Similarly, we would expect Malaysian investment overseas to also be stimulated. So it is a good agreement in terms of business, in terms of job creation, and for consumers. So that's where I think the basic emphasis of
That's
TPP
the niche
is.
of TPP.
Absolutely, yeah.
But there's a lot of countries in Southeast Asia are still not a member. I mean, the reality is only 4 countries in Southeast Asia that are members of the TPP. Would the US be able to persuade non-members to join too? What's the benefit for them to join in?
Well, I think, initially you must remember that TPP started with 4 countries. I think they were Brunei, Singapore, New Zealand, and Australia. It was not the US. So these 4 countries started, and the others joined in. And so
I'm just move the bandwagon forward.
Well, I don't, I'm not sure, because the last ones to join were Canada and Japan. So in the end, of course, this is a big tent. Anyone is welcome, provided they want to do it, So initially, it had a lot to do with countries wanting to join, rather than US or anyone picking who should join, who should not join. Now, we must also remember that more countries there are, more difficult to get an agreement, because everyone must agree. This is not based on vote. One country can hold up the whole deal. So that's what it means to have consensus. You gotta have consensus. It's tough enough having consensus among 12 countries, which TPP does. And so now that we have come to an agreement with 12 countries, and once I would imagine it's implemented, how it goes, I would imagine there are other countries who will want to join. Certainly, already expressing interest are Thailand, South Korea, Philippines, Indonesia. So, but no decision has been made on how to enlarge that. That will be a decision for the 12 original members to make once they see how it goes.
So they have the voting power to get other members?
I would say they have the inside track, and they clearly have a big say on what other countries should be in.
So that means, what about China? Are they considering getting China?
I would imagine at some point, if China expresses an interest, and if Chinese government feel they are ready to join TPP, then why not,
TPP is not the only free trade or mega free trade agreement in Southeast Asia. We all know that RCEP is also one of the major challenger against TPPA. Not to forget the EU-ASEAN free trade agreement. From your point of view, do you think it is a game changer for ASEAN?
Well, the real difference between something like RCEP and TPP is that TPP includes sectors which RCEP does not really include. I mean, issues such as labor issues, issues such as environment issues.
So not necessary trade issues is within TPP?
I think, I'm not sure you are correct in saying labor has nothing to do with trade. Who makes the goods? Labor makes the goods. Workers have a huge input in what is traded. And also, environment is a factor, green technology is a factor, as well as how do you discharge, if you are a factory, waste and so on. So all those trade these days, a little bit different from trade, several decades ago. And so
it's
TPP,
not old school trade agreement.
so I would say, the phrase we use is high standard trade agreement. But I guess what we're trying to do is that since trade and investment includes so many of these areas, that you should come to an agreement on them. Otherwise, you are really open to charges. Say, supposing you have no minimum wage, then your trading partner could consider that unfair. So all those are factors. So I don't want to say TPP or RCEP is better or not better.
Yeah, it's not a high school.
Yeah, it's not a
all over again.
It's not a grading situation, but rather it's a kind of a different agreement, where we have tried to include many elements of business. When you do business, you're employing labor. You must pay attention to environment and so on. So to have those disciplines included in the agreement.
It's easier for countries that already have those mechanisms in place to adhere to long list of agreements and provisions within TPPA. But what about countries like Vietnam and including Malaysia, where we have poor labor standards, environmental policies?
That's completely understandable, that there are countries who are at different stages of development. So many of the requirements have different time lags. So, while some countries you have to immediately meet certain standards, others you're given longer period to meet those standards. And also, what TPP has tried to do, especially in these areas like labor and environment, is to say we have international standard. Let's take an example, labor. You have what's called ILO standard, International Labor Organization. They have core ILO standard. The countries already in TPP have agreed to those international standards, so they must meet it. So rather than initially countries may have signed on to labor standard in ILO as an aspirational goal, but now it must be real a concrete goal rather than just aspirational.
On the other hand, all over the world, especially those member countries to the TPP, there are various anti-TPP movements for various reasons. The most dominant reason would be the fact that a lot of them are echoing it will be a free pass for multinational companies or big businesses to control resources, and even to the extent of controlling governments through provisions such as intellectual property, investor-state dispute settlement, and many more. Do you see there's more cons than pros?
Well, this is a tough question because certainly there are benefits to everyone. As I say, trade benefits everyone. How that benefit is shared is a very tricky issue. And now we must remember that TPP is not a revolutionary document. It's an evolutionary document. It takes time. There will be adjustment period. And certainly the detractors of TPP...
When you say adjustment period, what do you exactly mean?
I think for people to, for example, labor standard, for it to go into effect, it will take long time. So people will adjust over a long time rather than just overnight,
But would there be any monitoring mechanisms?
There will be monitoring mechanism by the government. And one you mentioned is ISDS, Investor State Dispute Settlement. If you feel that some countries are not adhering, certainly there is a recourse to ISDS. But mostly it's about self-policing. So I would say, detractors who said it's only going to benefit big businesses, I don't think that is necessarily true, because imagine, for example, you are opening your country to more foreign investment. Certainly there will be large foreign investors as well as small foreign investors who will come in. But big companies cannot do everything. They're going to have to subcontract many of the work. And an example is the electronic sector in Penang area. There have been huge multinational American companies that have come in, Motorola, Western Digital, Intel, what have you. But they also employ a lot of small and medium-sized companies. So it's not clear that, to me, benefit will go many ways.
Large companies, they can come and go easily. Maybe today they want to open their electronic businesses in Malaysia, and then the next day they see Vietnam have cheaper labor, better infrastructure, then they want to move it to Vietnam. Would this cause more harm to workers?
I think you're right. When a country moves away from one to the other, there is dislocation. We've seen that in textile sector, for example, in shoemaking sector. Initially, all the textile companies wanted to go to China. Then they moved China to Indonesia or Vietnam. Now they want to go to Bangladesh. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? You judge. If you're Indonesian, certainly I think you would want higher value-added sector. Textiles moving away means that your wages are now too high for textile. So this is a transformation of economy, and there is dislocation. And so rather than fighting the global trends, I think it's a government responsibility to have enough safety nets, enough safety nets and benefits so that those who are dislocated gets compensation, to try to stop this trend by saying that we would rather not have foreign investment. To me, seems like cutting off, your nose despite your face, something like that,
Let's shift our focus from the TPP to a smaller grouping, which is the ASEAN Economic Community. There's one question that I think would be interesting about the AEC. It's supposed to boost intra-trade within Southeast Asia, but do you see it also as an opportunity for US companies and businesses to trade and invest in Southeast Asia?
Yeah, okay, so I think ASEAN Economic Community has a very, very fantastic goal. That is to create a single market, make it easier for foreign companies to invest, to send goods to here. What does single market mean? Single market means essentially having same standard. So, for example, if you are selling shampoo, you can have one factory in ASEAN that makes it for every country in ASEAN. If you are a shampoo maker, Malaysian shampoo maker, you don't want to have a factory in Laos, Cambodia, Myanmar, Brunei. You want to have one factory that has the same standard. So that's what single market means. And I think that's great. That will certainly encourage foreign investors as well as within ASEAN investment. And I think that will really be a big boost for economic growth and trade within ASEAN. So it is nothing but positive. But everything you said about TPPA is also valid.
Would it be
you can say that the big businesses will benefit. Big Malaysian business may benefit more than small Malaysian businesses. How are you going to compete with Singaporeans? How are you going to compete with big markets like Indonesia? Mm-hmm. So these are all trends, benefit economic growth, jobs and wages, but there will be some dislocation, and in which the local government must be mindful and take care of.
With that, we will continue the next discussion in our third segment of the US pivot to ASEAN with a focus on TPP deal.